It's 2 o'clock, so I'll call to order the commission meeting for December 5th, 2019. I'd like to ask Commissioner Neal to lead us in invocation and Commissioner Elliott to lead us in Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand?
Let us pray. And Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to serve our community. We thank you for the opportunity we have to always serve you. And we pray that we would represent you in a way that would honor and glorify your name. As we go about the business of joint water and sewer, we pray that you would just give us discernment in the decisions that we make, that we would consider the financial responsibilities we have, and also consider all the people, the fine people that work for our authority, that we would look after their benefits as they look after us. And we just give you the honor and the praise and the glory. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have anybody who's requested to make a public comment period, so we'll proceed to the committee updates. The Facilities Committee, we've not met since the last meeting. We do have one project that was going to be bid this week, but it's been postponed for another week. Is that correct, Andrew?
That's correct. It was pushed back to the 10th.
Yeah, so we'll be able to act on that at the next Facilities Committee meeting, which will be the Wednesday before our next council commission meeting. Finance Committee, Commissioner Copeland is not here. They've not had a finance meeting either. Human Resources Committee,
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott.
Yes. The Human Resources Committee met today to go over potential courses of action involving our health care plans for 2020. The good health of our employees is paramount to the operations of this organization. Health care is the second largest expense in our operating budget. Key to improving employee health is a good wellness program with maximum employee participation. Staff will be looking at ways and wellness to determine ways to encourage employee participation and improve the health of the organization. We currently have 3 health plans for our employees. One has a $1,500 deductible, another has a $3,500 deductible, and then the third one is a health savings account plan. The Commission is looking at ways to strengthen the health savings account plan and maybe encourage employees to choose that option as a lower cost option. We really will not know exactly what we are going to do until United Healthcare, our current carrier, provides us our renewal options. This is expected in late December. And at that time, we will kick off and really dig into what we're going to do for healthcare in 2020. Questions? Additions? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott. Are there any other committee chairman have any comments?
No, sir.
Let's move to the approval section, the minutes from the November 21st, 2019 regular meeting. We've had a chance to review. To have a motion to accept.
Motion to accept the minutes, sir.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion is second. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. The minutes from the November 21st, 2019 executive session.
Move to accept the minutes as submitted for the executive session Thursday, November 21st.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. 2020 commission calendar.
Mr. Chairman, I know on the county side of the calendar for January 2nd, 2020, that they are recommending that that meeting not take place. I didn't know if that would coincide with anything that Joint Water and Sewer might want to do in the same consideration.
I was concerned about the calendar as well. I think we ought to look at our calendar being after the city commissions had opportunity to meet and the county commissions had the opportunity to meet, and we might find out who the appointments are unless y'all know that y'all are staying on as representatives.
I'm not sure.
You don't want to volunteer?
I've volunteered, but I don't know if it's,
Just think it makes sense to have our meeting afterwards so that we know who those appointments
Okay.
are, so that they can participate in the.
Are you all gonna have a new chairman?
no, sir, I don't think so.
Okay.
Could we just move our meeting date to the second Thursday of the month, and then likewise for the second meeting, just delay both of those?
It's a,
9th and the 22nd?
it's a 5 Thursday month, so we still would have 2 weeks between all the
Yeah,
meetings.
I think that's probably the way to go.
I thought that was a good option, but I also wondered if, having that third meeting, which is middle of the month, having one meeting in the month of January was acceptable.
That's where I would lean more.
Do we really need more than one meeting in January?
No, sir, we won't have anything that's going to come in after next meeting that will need to be approved that first or second week of January.
Not many business days between the next meeting and the first.
We'll probably be able to approve the award of the bid that we receive on the well.
That'll hopefully occur at the second meeting in December. So, other than that, we won't have anything due back for bids after next meeting prior to the second week of January. So, any bids we get that week could certainly wait till the third week of January for approval.
And
It's
then
a good
between
idea
that
to
third
me.
week in January, to get us back on track in February would only be 2 weeks, just like, just like.
Well, if we forego the January 2nd meeting, then we could keep our meeting on the 15th, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
And
That's really,
I'd like to make a motion that we just consider canceling our January 2nd, 2020 meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Anybody have any other comments?
That's what I would like to do as well. I mean, I know we're going to
Yeah.
vote on it, but.
Can I reconfirm that that does leave the full commission on January 16th?
That does what? I'm sorry.
yeah,
That's the
well,
motion.
Yes.
the
Right,
15th
January
is
16th.
committee meetings,
And the 16th, yeah.
is
I'm
the-
sorry, I was looking at the wrong
Would
date.
you like to amend your?
Yeah, that we forego, cancel the January 2nd, 2020 meeting and pick back up on our regular commission schedule for 1/16/2020.
Second.
Or
Motion second. Any other comments?
We get a 4th, 5th, and 6th.
put the thing to bed.
Make an amendment.
Yeah.
Made an amendment. You have to second an amendment.
You have to what?
You have to make a second to an amendment for the amendment to live.
And you did. I was just being funny saying third. I was just.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I
I'll
just
shut up.
wanted to be on track there, Commissioner.
Okay, the motion is to eliminate the January 2nd meeting, and then we'll proceed with the calendar like it is, starting on the 15th with the committee meetings, and the 16th will be the full commission meeting. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next item is a proposed SPLOST 2020 project list. Andrew Burrs.
Yes, sir. At the most recent Facilities Committee meeting, November the 20th, we presented a updated SPLOST list. Previously, we had discussed several of these projects, and we decided to again lump them based off of a total funding level that may be available. The most recent SPLOST, we were fortunate enough to get $15 million in allocation. So we've got a 4-part request here based off how much the city and the county may be willing to allow us to have as part of that. So the projects that we're considering, they're the same projects, just different funding levels based off of the amount that we may receive. Cured in place pipe rehab for gravity sewers throughout the county that are in need. Instead of doing entire basins, it'll be specific lines that need to be lined. Same way with transite water main replacements. Based off of our available break data, we'll replace just the lines that need to be replaced instead of going in full neighborhoods. Installing permanent backup pumping capabilities at our priority 1 and 2 lift stations. That will allow us to have certainly emergency response flexibility, but during normal operating conditions, we can bypass the station and do work on the station. And then the fourth project would be to provide water and sewer to unserved areas that may have failing septic tanks or wells. And the four requests, the total request is for 32, but there's also a 15, 20, and $25 million option for the county to consider. So the request today is for us to approve these projects for submission to the county commission for consideration.
Are you planning on submitting all three scenarios?
That would be the hope, and hope we get the most, and if we get the least, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that the attached proposed project list be submitted to Glenn County for consideration on the upcoming 2020 SPLOST list.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other questions?
Yes, sir, I got one question. Discussing with Commissioner Neal, is the county is okay with receiving something of this magnitude, like this, to decide, for them to decide, or for us to decide what? How you think? it would
Yeah,
proceed?
my understanding of the way it will come about, they'll allocate, depending on if they go ahead with the 5-year SPLOST recommendation, they'll have a breakdown then of funding for the different, for the city of Brunswick, for JWSC, and so.
My question was basically, is that if we submit this, does this give us scenario of 32 million?
Yes, they're not going to approve 32 million.
We're quite
Yeah,
sure
and
that.
so it's going to be, and I can't speak for the commission, but it's my understanding that it's going to be somewhere along the midpoint
Okay.
of that.
And then a question for discussion is, while we're providing the details, and I'll use item number 2, for example, we've listed a number of locations to perform work. And then also in item 4, we've listed some locations to perform that activity. What happens if those targets change or are no longer targets?
It depends on what's passed by the county.
Understood.
So
So we get some amount, and we've itemized our list of priorities. So no matter what the funding level is, we've determined that we can fund these activities, and they're scalable. But even with it being scalable, what I want to avoid is the possibility that maybe item 4, for example, none of these targets are viable at the time we're ready to execute. Because we've named specific target areas and none of those become viable for whatever reason, there's not enough customers that want service, then we would move on to another potential target. What would be the limitation for us for that amount of funding?
the county's not going to itemize these in their referendum. So
Okay.
it depends on the wording of the referendum. Typically, they would just say they would say water and sewer improvements to unserved areas,
Okay,
and leave it up
okay.
to that.
That was the clarification I was looking for.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it gives us the flexibility so we can execute a plan. And today, if we were picking the targets, they may be different targets in 2 years from now. We would want to have the flexibility to provide item number 4 into a given area scaled to the funding level.
Right.
Well, I think all the other ones are pretty self-explanatory, and we could scale those back. But maybe on item 4, we need to revise the motion just to say water and sewer to unserved areas and not put potential areas, not to outline those areas. Do we want to leave that in?
Well, I would happily revise the motion that the list we provide to the county include the project names, but not the specific description. But we might further offer the forecasted budget as it's
to be scaled depending on funding, but, so, let me revise.
I don't know that,
Yeah.
I don't know that how we word what we send to them will matter in that regard.
Right, I'm with
It-
you, sir.
Right, it only matters what the county puts on the referendum. So the county's not gonna itemize these on the referendum, I wouldn't think. They haven't done that in the past.
Right, I think what we have here is good. I think what we're trying to make sure that we don't box ourselves into something specific and then we can't deliver. I think what the county's gonna do is put just water and sewer to unserved areas, okay? They probably look at this may help our cause to get more money by what the description is. However, on the referendum, it would just be water and sewer to unserved areas.
That's right, that's exactly
And
right.
we can ensure that
If we,
do that.
if we didn't tell them what we were gonna do with it, we just said water and sewer unserved areas, they may not understand exactly how much funding is gonna be needed.
And as the referendum is the language is being developed, you would have input with the county attorney as far as how that referendum would read.
I have not in the past,
Can request
but
to.
we can talk
Request you
about
do
it.
that.
We would certainly want to know how it's going to read as to what it would do to affect joint water and sewer.
Yeah, my point is, I want us to be able, whatever funding the utility receives, I want us to be able to execute
Yes.
and scale it according to the funding. But if something changes beyond our reasonable ability to plan, I wouldn't want it to be eliminated because of the description issue. So in my view, the description is provided for a staffing function. But as a utility requesting funding from the governing agency, what we're asking, the specifics they need, in my view, is the project names.
I think leaving the budget numbers in there is fine, because we know we can spend more than each budgeted item for each one of those class of
Yes.
of things we're gonna be doing.
Just strike the third column.
Yes, leave the
Yeah, under
numbers
description.
and the project name, just strike this description.
And again.
Well, I think the county needs it, though, because the
Yeah,
county- you
the
want to know
county
what we're
probably
doing.
wants some explanation
Yeah.
of what these things are. I would want to make sure that the final language that goes out on the referendum gives us the latitude that we would need to be most effective.
I mean, this is a request to include, not necessarily a request that you copy paste and put on the referendum.
That's right.
This is our draft proposal to.
I think that's what we're all saying, right?
And based off of that, it kind of, I mean, it negates what I was going to ask a little bit, but I still think it's valid. The total request here is 8, 6, 3, and 15, based off priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. But if you go to actually the 15 million we're asking for, we're changing the priority 1 down, the priority 2 down. It almost seems backwards to me. It almost seems like we would say, and look, if we're only going to get 15, these are our priorities, and you give us as much as you can. And if we don't make it all the way down to priority 4, we just don't make it down. But instead of taking away from priority 1 to partially fund priority 4, taking away from priority 1 to partially fund priority 3, it just seems like if we were going to only get 15 million, if I was, I guess I am, but layman reading this, if I was thinking I'm only getting $15 million, I was thinking my first 15 is going 8 to priority 1, 6 to priority 2,
Right.
and then 1 to priority 3.
Well, if I may, Commissioner, the reason we did it in a scalable format for each category is so that we could demonstrate that each of these are very important priorities. The number 1 item doesn't, it doesn't have a greater priority than some of the lower ones, and that's why we would make it scalable. In reality, if we don't receive, for example, on item number 1, 8 million, we would scale that down accordingly, but the target areas that we choose may not wind up exactly that scale number. It would be close based on our initial development of the list. And in my view, we wouldn't want to say, okay, we're going to fund number 1 at 8 million, but if we only get 10 million, guess what? Items 3 and 4 get no funding. I don't think that's where we are with the priorities. I think each of these are important for our system, particularly in the expansion area, that we'd want to do some amount of expansion during this next period of time that SPOS funding is available.
Maybe it's just a nomenclature deal then, but if I was reading it, I would assume priority one means priority one.
Yeah, but, yeah, and it could be that, but I think there's, you know, we take the money that we get, and there's, of those 4 priorities, there is money that needs to be spent in each of those areas. So we do what we can with what we get in each of those 4 areas, is how I see it. And maybe overall priority might not be the best nomenclature, as you say.
What you outlay makes sense. I just probably done that way.
Maybe we should reword that and just say project number
Project number, yes, sir.
rather than priority number, because that is a little misleading.
Yes, sir.
Well, I will suggest that the motion as presented is applicable, and that, Andrew, if we just adjust the nameplate data,
Yeah,
then we're good.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
project.
Any other questions? There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Chairman, going back to the calendar, did we actually do a motion to approve the entire calendar, or are we just for January? Do we need a motion to approve the entire calendar, or
Just to eliminate the second,
Sorry, we didn't-
January 2nd.
so I just wanted to clarify, we did approve the entire calendar?
No.
You got what you needed for that?
No, we didn't.
So do we need to then approve it? Were you asking for us to?
Well, the way that I accepted the motion was that was your intent, was to accept the entire calendar.
I think that was the intent, but I didn't know if we physically worded it that way, but it might not have been the intent, so it might be confusion on the intent.
Yeah, well, it was to cancel January 2nd meeting and proceed with the calendar as is.
Well, as far as the full calendar, we're required to have meetings the first and third Thursday of every month unless there is a specific vote to cancel one of them. So by canceling the first meeting, the other meetings are already set unless there's a new motion to cancel those.
So you're happy with it?
Personally, I am.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Let's,
The Thursday, 4th to Saturday.
That's not a problem.
We could survive
Yeah.
change priority,
Private name.
yes, overall priority.
let's move to the discussion section. And item 1 is discussion of Terry Creek consent decree.
Yes, sir. Upon request of Commissioner Elliott, this week or last week, one of the federal judges approved the consent decree between Hercules and the EPA as far as the cleanup of Terry Creek. And we had had some preliminary discussions a few years back concerning treating some of the water from that area. And I was going to give an update on what we had done to make sure all of our commissioners were comfortable with our history with this decree. We have had no discussions with Pinova or Hercules concerning the actual remediation of the outfall site. Our discussions over the years have been groundwater remediation, for them to pump groundwater out and send to us at the wastewater plant. Now, we agreed to accept the flow at first, and then once the consent order hit, we backed off of that approval. And then they decided that they were going to require them to put in carbon filters to clean the material up prior to sending to us, because the material that was going to be sent to us is not something that can be biologically treated. Hercules decided they did not want to put in 3 carbon filters to do that. So then we requested that if they didn't do that, could they put in large frac tanks that could settle out, and then we could get testing of the tanks before they released them to us. They did not want to install the frac tanks, and they did have some smaller tanks on site, and the concentrations never got to the point where we could actually accept the groundwater flow from them. So once they couldn't ever get that done, and now that Terry Creek has the consent decree, we are completely out of it, but just wanted to open that up.
What you mean we out of it?
As far as, we're not taking water from them.
So what are they gonna do with it?
My understanding is they're putting it and treating it on their own site and discharging it through their outfall. If they send the material to us, the bacteria in our wastewater plants would not respond well to
I
that.
understand that. I
Right.
understand that part.
So they're having to treat it on their own site instead of sending it to us. It's cheaper for them to send it to us because they don't have to put in the equipment to treat it on site.
Right.
But we were not able to make an agreement on that, so they're having to treat it on site.
You know, Hercules or Pine Knoll have been very, can't think of a good word to say other than cheap in their dealing with this issue. Honeywell was very, very upfront, and they paid a lot of money to try to make sure, they worked with the county, the community to try to make, to mediate their contamination. But Hercules has been very, very difficult to deal with, and the city did not agree with the decree. I'm sure we have to live with what we got, though. But one of the reasons why they said it was because Hercules wasn't willing to try to be a good neighbor or to try to help clean up the mess that's been allowed to fester for over the years. So, and to hear that what you just said really, really makes it not so palatable for the city as we move forward. And I will voice my opinion to EPA, EPD, and let them know exactly we're really not happy with it, even though we have to go along with it. We disagreed with the decree totally from the beginning. And they told us that if we don't accept this, that it's gonna be tied up in court for years, and also, it'll be even more expensive. And Pine Knoll was looking for a cheap way out of this. And that seemed like what this community is getting.
Okay, now, we permit Hercules Pine Nova
I know you do.
to send us flows.
Yes.
And there's a big permit.
From their actual process flows.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And, I was involved in the original discussions on this. And I think we need to send Pine Nova and a letter to EPD and DNR that basically tells Pine Nova that we are going to do more frequently testing of the influent is the correct term, right?
That's correct.
Influent, to ensure
That they don't.
that they
send some
don't send us
stuff.
anything
Yeah.
that we don't want.
Exactly. I don't know why they wouldn't do the carbon filters. I mean, that seems to be something to try to help this area, to help it in a sense. But, that just shows that they're not willing to work with this community, in my estimation.
To your point, Commissioner Elliott, our pretreatment permit allows us to take as many samples as we so choose on that stream.
I just think they need to know up front that they're on
They're not
notice, that we're
violating that
watching this.
decree. Yeah.
Right.
What's our testing protocols?
They submit samples to us twice a month, and then we will take our own samples twice a month. If we suspect an issue, we will take additional samples. Typically, we do not have issues with their discharge to our wastewater plant. Apparently, years ago, we would get slugs through the plant, and that would cause problems, but they've been much better about giving us a continuous flow, and we don't have any issues at the plant now. So unless there's an upset, we would just take our traditional 2 samples, they take their 2 samples, and we're good to go.
And our sampling, say 2 samples, is that on one day a month, or is that weekly, or?
That's 2 samples, 1 day a month, and they're 24-hour composite samples. We get a small aliquot every hour, and then we get a large amount at the end and test it to get a composite of what they sent us for the full day.
Is it random days?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this?
Well, Commissioner Elliott, you offer a suggestion there. Do we want to make that an action on the part of the commission?
Yes, I think so.
I support that, but I think
Yeah,
we need to do
I
that in
think-
a form of a motion.
I mean, I guess
Mr. Chairman.
I need to kind of structure a motion. Mr.
We-
Chairman.
We first have to take a vote to put it on the approval section.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, it's not going anywhere.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add Terry Creek consent decree letter to the approval agenda.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I second that.
Motion second, any questions?
I guess I heard that, but
They want to do it now.
almost want a little more understanding or exactly what we're.
I think what the motion is that Commissioner Elliott would like to see us send a letter to EPD and Pinova regarding the testing.
And an increased
We're gonna
frequency.
increase testing to verify that they're not sending us and we're having to treat their waste that's not been properly pre-treated.
Putting them on notice, more or less, that we're aware that the possibility exists that they could,
Or if they have
exploit.
I hate to say it,
cross-contamination.
People will sometimes say, well, they won't catch this.
Well, I think our plant would catch it pretty quick.
It's a direct discharge to the plant, so we know about it pretty quickly if there's a problem.
Yeah, it'll blow up the plant. Not literally, but kill all the bugs.
Yeah. So we got a motion, a second?
A motion and a second already.
Add it.
Yeah, all we're
To the
doing is
approval.
adding it right now.
Any other questions? Let me ask our director, how do you feel about the motion?
I'll be happy to do it without the motion if that's just something you want me to do, or y'all can take a vote and formalize it if you'd like to. I certainly can take that instruction and move forward.
That almost makes sense to me, is let Andrew Rasmussen handle it versus
Okay.
Miss Angela Walker is not here, but she will happily take as many samples as you would like for her to.
Well, I think you're right. We can give you direction to do something, to do that, you know,
Right.
versus,
I think the issue is not additional sampling. The issue is placing the facility on notice, their management team,
Yep.
and then the regulatory agencies that have oversight, is simply copying them that our monitoring is going to be elevated. I think that's what we want to accomplish. So in that regard, it can be done administratively, Andrew, to send them a letter.
Sure.
And the other thing is, do we want to formalize it or not? I think we just want to accomplish sending a letter.
I think the letter is, I think we can just do a letter and not have it as a commission.
okay.
Well,
Okay.
because you don't ever know when it gets to different governmental agencies, EPA, EPD, DNR, all, you know, you don't know what they were told, so you don't know how they made their decision. We weren't involved in that. They just need to be on notice that we're noticing, and that they can't, at some point in time, either side of that, come back and say, well, we thought JWSC was
That's
treating
right.
this water, and it turns out they're not. This gives them notice.
Sure.
That we're not treating it, so.
And in your letter, Mr. Director, I would kind of briefly summarize the history, briefly explain to them the result of what happens if they inadvertently or on purpose send us untreated influent from what they're doing, and explain to them what that will cause, so that they're all on notice with something that tells them, you know, you screw up and you send us stuff, you're gonna cause Glenn County and the city of Brunswick not to have a sewer system.
Well, they have an industrial pretreatment ordinance. And also, we
Well,
have
they gotta
sewer
pre-treat
use
it,
ordinance.
That's correct.
And everybody has to meet
But they've
that.
got to know that, I think we're doing the right thing by saying, y'all got to know that we don't have an agreement to accept this and don't plan on it.
That's
So that
correct.
they don't make false
That's
assumptions.
that's correct. No, that wording needs to be in there.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're gonna vote on this, or we just
I
gonna?
think we decided just to have the executive director
Do I have a motion to withdraw
withdraw.
the motion?
Second.
Second.
Okay, you've been directed, okay?
I got you.
Thank you. Executive Director's update? No, first, replacement of, procedure for replacement of commissioner.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I have spoken with Mark Spalding, who is with the DA's office, who runs the grand jury appointments, and we'll be initiating that process tomorrow, if you'd like me to. He is looking at dates, though, to determine when the actual interviews, acceptance of applications and things like that will occur. I know the grand jury that is currently seated right now will be changing in March 15th, I believe is the date. So it will be prior to that. It looks like applications will be due sometime in the beginning to middle of February, and that the appointment will be prior to March 15th.
Applications in February?
Yes.
You have to do the public notice to accept the applications, right?
Right, we have to send out a notice. The ads will be beginning of January to the middle of January, and then there'll be a few weeks of accepting applications, so probably 1st of February would be the deadline to.
So until that time, we'll only have 6 commissioners.
No, sir. Technically, Commissioner Copeland will remain a commissioner until that time.
But is that not, if his term expires, that makes sense, but if he resigns, how can you say, well, you're stuck?
That's just what the law says.
Really?
It says it is,
He serves
he
until.
serves until his
someone is appointed.
successor is named.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just thought it was effective.
Any other questions?
There's no other option.
Executive Director's update?
Yes, sir. Georgia Rural Water Association will be hosting asset management training here in this room next week for community members. People from our surrounding communities will be here, and we will have 10 staff members going through that training here. They try to host these throughout the state and try to get regional products going, so we're going to host one of those. As Commissioner Turnipseed said earlier, the bids on Ridgewood were pushed back to the 10th, so those are due next Tuesday. We've got the meter RFP, the roof repair bid, and the Magnolia Park bid all out right now. Those are all due back in January. Our ordinance revisions are going to get hopefully approved by the City Commission on the 18th. There was a little bit of an administrative issue with the public notice that pushed us back 2 weeks, but fairly minor there. We have the upcoming annual Grits and Issues breakfast next Friday morning at Epworth. If you would like to attend and sit at our table, please let us know. And then yesterday, we did hold our annual Christmas luncheon, and with part of that is the employee dessert contest. And the top 3 finishers were Miss Tiffany Tyner, who was in first place with her Oreo lasagna. Second place was Miss Krista Free with Oreo brownies. I think somebody liked Oreos. And third place was Miss Janice Meredith with her surprise brownies. So 3 winners on that, and then we did have some leftovers from that, which were donated to the well for them to have a meal yesterday as well.
Very good.
Great.
It was a very good luncheon. I want to commend the staff and those who put it on. They did a great job. I think some of the desserts are back there, though, if anybody would like a dessert, left over, some of the desserts. I just want to say that Commissioner Copeland has served us real well during his 3 years. We regret to see him having to submit his resignation. He's been a great commissioner for us due to personal issues and his job issue in Atlanta, Georgia. I think he just felt like he just could not make the trip down here for the meetings. It was a burden for him and his wife. And so we understand that, but we will miss him, and we look forward to having a replacement as soon as possible. So we'll have a full 7-person board. That's the only update that I have. Any other commissioners have any comments or questions or updates?
No.
I don't think we need.
I'm sorry, just a question. So with us being down to 6, or I guess when we're down to 6, does the quorum change to 4, or is it still 5?
Still 5.
We need a motion to excuse Commissioner Copeland.
We're not excusing him. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I so move to adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.